views and opinions expressed on the Hard Time Podcast are of the hosts and guests individually. The Hard Time Podcast is for entertainment purposes only and is not affiliated with any entity, agency, or department. Human beings have thoughts and feelings that do not necessarily affect the professional performance of their duties.
Ladies and gentlemen, the story you are about to hear is true. The names have been changed to protect the innocent.
An inmate attacked a correctional officer in St. Louis County this week after he refused to go back to his cell.
This is what we have to deal with inmates like that. Everybody has an opinion, about what goes on and stuff in here, but 9 times out of 10, anybody that has anything negative to say about a correctional officer, they never even been in the facility, never been inside of the jail.
They have 24/7 to sit there and come up ways to outsmart them. So they always want to try, but we've got to be proactive.
To remain professional and do a job.
Officers being praised for their quick actions. Lake County Sheriff says, quote, they are heroes in my books.
Regular day at the office.
There we go. Sorry. Still getting used to doing this whole live thing. So welcome to Hard Time Live. Like I said, I'm Jake Motherfucker Welder. Got one listener already on Instagram. One person joined our live. We're live also. Should be live on YouTube as well. So thanks for joining me. I have a few questions from a listener. This episode, again, brought to you by Shorty Rise. She provided a lot of the information for this live. And also, Brittany Falconer-Ader, she added a news story. So why don't we get to that one first? This one is: incarcerated person walks away from prison from Action Conservation Camp. So California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation officials are searching for an incarcerated person who walked away from Action Conservation Camp in Los Angeles County Tuesday, January 28th, 2025. At approximately 9:15 p.m., staff discovered camp participant Jesse Meza was missing from the camp during a head count. Staff immediately initiated an emergency count, confirming Meza was not at the camp. Within minutes, agents from CDCR's Office of Correctional Safety were directed to locate and apprehend Meza, and notification was made to local law enforcement. Meza, 38, was seen wearing gray shorts and thermals, white tennis shoes, and a state-issued orange jacket. He is 5 feet 5 inches tall and weighs 159 pounds. He has black hair and brown eyes. Meza was received from Kern County on March 11, 2022, to serve 16 years for assault with a firearm and enhancement for use of a firearm while possessing a firearm as a felon, both second strike offenses and vandalism. So CDCR asks anyone who sees Meza or has knowledge of his whereabouts, contact any law enforcement agency, call 911 or Special Agent Brian Ellis at 951-232-3696. Since 1997, this is 99% of incarcerated people or inmates who have escaped or walked away from an adult institution, camp, or in-state contract bed or a community rehabilitative program placement have been apprehended. So they're hoping they can find this guy. He's got neck tattoos and a face tattoo, so fairly easily identifiable. But yeah, we just covered last week on Hard Time inmate firefighters, how that works for them, what they're and like one story from a firefighter, what he's doing and how it's given him something to look forward to the future. He's trying to get into possibly doing firefighting outside of jail. So that's good. Range Blood, sorry, I went black there for a little while, but I'm glad you joined us. David J, thank you as well for giving me the updates. Just figuring out how all this stuff works. So I've done just a handful of lives. I need to do some practice lives or something so I can work out some of the kinks for you guys. I know Shorty Rides is probably she's probably listening at work. She said she won't be able to join us actively, but she sent a couple questions in for me. I'm gotta get on the right Instagram. Get off my personal one. One of the ones she asked if I planned on retiring from corrections, and as of right now, I have like a third of the time vested that I need to in order to retire. So it's possible that's what I'll do, or I could transfer to something else within the agency that I work for. They do have other options. You know, if you have county or state jobs, you can transfer into other things. So I'll never rule that out. It might be something that I can do, but we were talking a little bit about just the job and what it's like working and stuff. And I said, you know, I'll put up with a lot as far as the job if it means that my community members aren't putting up with it. So, you know, we keep people away from their victims, at least for a short amount of time. We keep people from, you know, burglarizing people in you know, my community or neighboring communities. We have contracts with a lot of other places throughout the state. So we have almost half of the state will send us incarcerated individuals, fucking inmates. So, see, she had like 4 questions for me here. I just got to scroll back up to it. She asked how I handle stress at work. I think it's Gitmo. Gitmo has job openings, David J. That would be interesting. I hear Cuba's beautiful this time of year. I like their sandwiches. I know they have a lot of fast food and stuff on base, but as you can tell, I don't need any more fast food. So, or any home cooked food for that matter. But again, she asked about handling stress at work. I think most corrections officers that are doing it for any amount of time are good at compartmentalizing. You have to be able to put that kind of stuff aside while you're working on it. You know, it's easy to just say, let's just work on the problem. It might be stressful in the moment, but it's not something that you can get overwhelmed by. You have a job to do. So I think, you know, after the fact, I'm go back to my office after dealing with something, and yeah, I listen to podcasts or jump on Instagram and shitpost and sometimes do some research for a hard time in between phone calls and emails and all the problems that go along with the job. So it's a pretty mundane answer, but yeah. And my family for me is like a stress relief, getting out and spending time with my kids and stuff. Like, that's how I decompress from work. So, when I get home at 4 o'clock in the morning, they're sleeping, but like last night I get home at 10 p.m. So they're up for a little bit so they can see me before they go to bed. So spending some time with my kids is a good way to decompress for me. Why did you want to work in this field? Was another question she had for me. It wasn't that I thought this was like the end all be all or something I was going to do forever, but when the job come up, I thought it was something I could potentially do. So I just ended up getting into it and turned out to really enjoy it. And as an officer, it's quite a bit different than working as a sergeant, which I actually enjoy more, supervising and stuff. There's definitely parts of it that are difficult, but it makes the day more enjoyable. I feel like it's more impactful dealing with stuff, because it just seems like I can affect a lot more change when it comes to stuff. I'm able to work directly with community members at times and offer solutions. I have a little bit more leeway in dealing with inmates, and then can try to be compassionate, because I was wearing a different color shirt just a couple of years ago. So I try to remember that when dealing with officers, try not to be like the supervisors that gave me a really hard time coming up and stuff. And I will still work with some of them. Some of them were great, and I work even closer with them. So it's been an interesting journey, but it wasn't something that I was like, getting into law enforcement was like a childhood dream or anything. It was just something that I applied for a couple jobs. I applied for adult, juvenile, and the fire department all at the same time, amongst a couple other jobs. And I was hoping actually to work like in a gun shop or something. That was like my number one goal when I moved out here. But that didn't end up working out, and now I'm here. How do you handle aggressive inmates? Well, it's like I tell people all the time. It's like you can be the thermometer, or you can be the thermostat. So in dealing with them, there are times where you've already gone past, if they've already become violent, hurt somebody, or are actively trying to break something, then you just deal with it. You jump right in there, grab them, put them in a holding cell, and they're locked down. Or you might have to take them to another part of the facility, depending. So in those types of situations, you don't really have any choice. But if somebody's just getting aggressive, if somebody's just upset, that's when, you can come in and be calm and get the people that they're upset with out of the situation. And then I have the ability to, talk to them and try to bring the situation down, try to find out what's going on. So, sorry, I'm just now realizing I need to click on these comments for you guys to let everybody on. So, but with a lot of the aggressive inmates, the majority of them, the biggest thing is we get a lot of gang members, and with them, it's all about respect. If you come and talk to them respectfully, and 9 times out of 10, they will respond well to that. And actually, they can be some of our better behaved inmates, because they're usually in on really serious charges, and they know that, and they're trying to kind of get by without causing themselves from getting any new charges. So that works out well sometimes for us. I try to also make sure that I interact with the inmates and stuff, not just when it's a negative situation. I'm not running around so busy all the time. There's downtime where I can go visit a cell block and talk with them and joke around. And, most of them are like teenage boys is the majority of the people that I deal with. So joking around with them a little bit about, stuff that we can within reason, telling dad jokes and stuff, and finding out what their situation is when they're, I use it for intel gathering to find out what they've got going on personally in their lives that might trigger something later on, or where they're at in the legal system that might be causing them stress. When's your next court date? What are you expecting? Have they told you anything? Are they trying to get you out of here? Like going through all those kind of things with them. And I don't have time to sit down and play cards anymore, but I used to. But they told me I had to let them win once in a while or it was child abuse. So I've kind of cut back on playing cards with our fucking inmates, incarcerated persons. Do you get along well with the other officers? For the most part, there's always those situations where you end up where you have to. I was talking with one of the sergeants last night, and he had to give a write-up to somebody because of a situation involving like suicide protocols. And so, there's that tension when you have to write somebody up. There will be those type of times that you can't really be friends with everybody all the time, but generally speaking, I have a pretty good rapport with people. I was talking to one of the officers last night and dealing with somebody. This inmate has serious mental issues, and he was saying, he was dealing with him. The guy was extremely upset to begin with, and he was able to calm the situation down after a little bit of negotiation with him, and he was able to work it out where it didn't end up being like a serious rule violation. Everything was calmed down, and the officer thanked me because we dealt with this situation before, and I try to leave it in their hands, like as far as how far the punishments and stuff will go, because they're the ones in there dealing with the inmates. And he decided to give him a break, and it worked out well for him. So those are things that I've done before previously, and the officer was thankful that I listened and kind of gave him the leeway and then allowed him to do that, because some people micromanage a lot more with officers. They tell them, you have to do this, you have to do that. And I try to give them a little bit when possible. There are times where it's not possible. I said, absolutely, this situation, this has to happen. There's no question. In a serious situation, we've got to deal with it. But if it's something that is kind of on the fence, try to give them an opportunity. So sorry about the background noise, guys. I'm working on some solutions to get some more soundproofing for my space so that it's not echoing in here now. I got my closed-in soundproofing, but I got to get some soundproofing for like the door and stuff of my new office. So thank you for bearing with me. We have some more, again, stuff from Shorty Rides. We have Fremantle Prison. There was a lot of stuff that we didn't cover in the episode that we just didn't have time to get to everything. So I'll see if I can share a couple. We have a couple escape stories And then we have a little bit more of the history. So maybe we'll start with the history of Fremantle Prison, and then we'll go from there. Also, I want to acknowledge over here Instagram. We have Elijah, Type 93, the Mama Martha, and Kizette have joined us. So want to acknowledge you guys that are over on Instagram as well. I see you've joined. I don't see any comments or questions. If you guys have any questions that you want to add, you can DM me or just throw it up in the comments, and we'll throw it up there. So, and Tyler, I have the frosted honey bun at home with a little bit of cinnamon. So I don't have to go shopping in the back, thankfully. So my needs are more than well adequately taken care of. So the Swan, the history of Fremantle Prison. This is from the Little House of Horrors. Is the publication or the website that this is from. They go on to talk about some ghost stories and stuff that were there for Fremantle Prison, but it gave a pretty interesting synopsis of what happened or how this came about, this facility. So it's the Swan River Colony, later named Fremantle, was established in 1829 as a free settlement. By the 1840s, as a settlement flourished, there was a need for cheap laborers. As a result, the colony accepted some British convicts to come to Australia to work. So initially, this colony differed from the other penal settlements as Norfolk Island and Port Arthur. There were only, or is it Norfolk? There was only one problem. The colony roundhouse, which is built around 1831, was completely full. So when the first ship with the British convicts arrived in Western Australia, all 75 of them were forced to stay on board the Sidian. The Sidian was a British ship that was considered to be the first convict ship to travel to that part of Australia. So we've talked about prison ships before on the show. But those were, I think a lot of them were British and some of them were American. So a new prison was built. To house all the British convict laborers, a new prison was to be built. In 1851, the start of construction began. The first convict was welcomed in 1855. Back then, the prison was simply known as the Convict Establishment, and it was renamed Fremantle Prison in 1867. The design for the Fremantle Prison was based on the English Pentonville Prison. Although the Australian building was much bigger, the main cell block alone could house up to more than 1,000 convicts. At first, the convicts at Fremantle were generally short-sentenced prisoners of good character, but soon less desirable convicts were sent. Eventually, in the 20th century, most convicts at this prison were violent offenders serving long sentences. Discontent among the prisoners. Hi, Falcon Raider. Welcome. As the offenders grew more violent and more dangerous, the less freedom they got in the beginning. The convicts were sent off working on infrastructure and construction jobs, such as building the Fremantle Asylum, now known as the Fremantle Arts Center. Isn't that very progressive? They built this in 1867. Because of their violent nature, the convicts were no longer allowed to work outside, and jobs needed to be found inside the prison complex. There were some workshops, but not enough to employ all convicts. The convicts weren't happy about this. There were several riots. 8 of these riots got pretty out of hand, especially in the Fremantle Prison Riot of 1988. Prisoners have started a fire and taken 15 hostages. In the end, nobody got hurt, but the prison was severely damaged. It did get hurt. One person did get hurt. Somebody broke a hand, broke their arm there. So I Hi, Falk. Everybody's saying hi to Falk Narrator. Punishments and executions. The original roundhouse, which served as a prison and a courthouse. Sorry, this monitor is giving me issues. I'm going to move it over here for now. The prison and a courthouse also served as a place for public executions. This remained the way until Fremantle Prison came under local control in 1886. Then the gallows were constructed. It was completed in 1888. Fremantle Prison was the only place in Western Australia where executions were allowed. Here, 43 men and 1 woman were hanged between 1889 and 1964. The first person to be hanged at Fremantle Prison in 1889 was a murderer named Jimmy Long, and the last person was a serial killer, Eric Edgar Cook, also known as the Nightcaller or the Nedlands Monster, in 1964. In Australia, the capital punishment was abolished in 1984. Punishments given at the prison were flogging until 1943, solitary confinement, and a restricted diet of bread and water. Okay, and then this gets into a few of the people who were at Fremantle Prison who were held there. Governor Hampton. When John Hampton was appointed governor of the Western Australia in 1962, the convicts of Fremantle Prison faced a dark period. Governor Hampton was tyrannical and harsh, and this made him extremely unpopular with the colonists. If a prisoner attempted to escape, he demanded 100 lashes with the cat of 9 tails whip, up to 9 months in solitary confinement, starting with 30 days of bread and water diet. But that didn't stop the convicts. During the time that Hampton was governor, more than 90 convicts tried to escape prison. Some succeeded, most of them did not, but there was one man who seemed to enjoy shaming Hampton. His name was Moondyne Joe. So this inmate, Moondyne Joe, Joseph Bolio Johns, better known as Moondyne Joe, was a well-known Australian bushranger. In 1853, he was imprisoned at Fremantle Prison when the convict establishment, the convict establishment, for stealing a horse. He had 3 years to serve. He was set free, but he was sent to prison again in 1865 for stealing and killing an ox. This time, Governor Hampton was in charge of Moondyne. Joe escaped while working outside the same year. He was captured and his imprisonment was extended by 1 year. 1 year later, he attempted to escape again. Once again, he was discovered. 5 more years were added. Governor Hampton was shamed by Joe's attempts, which were also picked up by the Perth and Fremantle newspapers. He ordered his son George to build a jail for Joe, from which it was made impossible to escape. But Moondyne Joe could not be stopped. Due to poor health condition, Joe was sent out breaking stones in the courtyard. The labor is tough, but the fresh air and the exercise were good for him. Joe was breaking stones every day of the week, and a huge pile grew. Soon he was able to hide from sight completely and was able to dig a hole in the prison wall with his pickaxe. He did it again, and this time he was a free man for 2 years, until he was caught stealing wine in the cellar of Houghton's vineyard. Joe was lucky, though. Governor Hampton had been replaced. In his absence, the new governor was a more forgiving man. Joe was given the ticket to leave in 1871 and was released in 1873. But his story continues later at Fremantle Asylum. So I guess it says it continues at Fremantle Asylum, and then it doesn't pick back up. Bye, Marine's Blood. Okay. So And then it gets into, some of the ghosts and stuff supposedly there. So maybe we'll save that for another day. We can get into a few more of the escapes then. So some of these are a little more modern than the 1860s. This one is from the FremantlePrison.com.au. So this is from their history and heritage portion of their website. This is one of the most audacious escapes occurred in 1972. It took almost 12 months to plan and involved 3 prisoners. Owen Hooper, William K. Bolt, and Stanley Stone. Hooper was a talented electronics technician whose skills were employed by the prison authorities. K. Bolt was his assistant, known as the Luxury Man. Stone looked after the prison canteen and shared a cell with K. Bolt. Hooper and K. Bolt were put in charge of the prison radio studio located in the Division 4 cell. From here, they were able to broadcast programs and music that prisoners could listen to in their cells. They also had a cell next door equipped with a workshop in which they carried out electronic repair work for prison staff and charitable organizations. In 1971, Hooper and his assistant were required to do some work in the prison hospital, relocating several telephones. Hooper used his skills to tap into the hospital telephone system, running the line to the radio cell in Division 4. He then constructed a telephone from spare parts and electronics workshop. Hooper and K. Bolt used the device connected to the line to the hospital to make phone calls. They telephoned radio stations and made music requests. They contacted a social worker and had a number of lengthy conversations. Hooper gained permission from the prison authorities to join a French government weather balloon tracking project. He then constructed a receiving set that he could monitor signals from the weather balloons. Hooper claimed that interference from the radio studio made the monitoring difficult and convinced prison administration to let him have another cell on the top floor of the new division. He then moved their secret telephone from the main cell to the new division. At this stage, Stanley Stone joined 2 others in their plot to escape. On a dark, rainy morning in July 1972, the trio broke a hole in the ceiling on the top floor in New Division and went into action. They clambered through the ceiling to the end of New Division and broke a hole through the new asbestos roof on the western side. The prisoners, now out in the open, were in view of the armed guard on the perimeter and the number 2 gun post less than 50 meters away. Using his homemade telephone, Hooper rang the guard saying, "Gate officer here, some suspicious activity has been observed near the back of the carpenter shop. Keep an eye on it for the next few minutes." That was enough to distract the officer so that the trio could get to their ladder, made from plated telephone cable, on the hooks of the metal conduit from the new division roof to the perimeter wall. Crossing the bridge, they descended down the opposite side of the wall in Knutsford Street to the waiting getaway car, previously using their illegal telephone. They were caught 3 months later and returned to the prison in October 1972. It is believed they hid out with the assistance of the social worker Hooper had made contact with the previous year. So that's pretty clever, being able to use a phone to be able to contact those people and distract the guard with the prank call. This next one was called the Rubbish Truck Heist Story. On March 24, 1989, 2 prisoners, Stephen Burnett and Peter Boyd, were in Fremantle Prison for armed robbery. Were on sick parade at the prison hospital. At around 10 a.m., a garbage truck paid its weekly visit to collect the rubbish from the hospital kitchen. The prisoners used a knife to overpower the driver and commandeered the truck. They drove the truck across the east bank and rammed the metal gates on the south wall. On the fourth attempt, they managed to break through by taking the gates partly off the hinges. The guard of the number 3 gun tower fired on the truck, shooting out the front tires as the truck was reversing into the street. The prisoners drove the truck south along Hampton Road, less than a kilometer to Ray Avenue, where they abandoned it in the middle of the road. They then dragged a taxi driver from a cab outside of Beaconfield Hotel and continued south along Hampton Road, where a chase began involving several police cars and 3 police helicopters. Jeez, so they had a helicopter for each of them. At 10:45 a.m., they abandoned the cab in Yangbipup. I guess that's a Yangbipup, taking to Bushland near the railway line. Police caught Boyd, but Burnett, who was armed with a carving knife, evaded them. Burnett ran into a nearby residence and menaced 2 male occupants with the 30-centimeter knife. Both men were ordered outside in their car, where one of them escaped and raised the alarm. Burnett drove away with the other man as hostage in the stolen car. Police lost track of their vehicle for more than an hour, but at 12:40 p.m. it was seen in Kelmscott. Detectives chased and stopped the stolen car in a side street off Albany Highway. Abandoning the car and his hostage, Burnett ran to the nearby bush, but was captured within minutes. Boyd and Burnett were later returned to Fremantle Prison and later charged with a series of offenses related to their escape. Alterations were made as a result of the escape, including the addition of bollards, which we've covered before on this show, and steel ropes, both inside and outside the gates, and a cyclone mesh fence closing off part of the area, or like we would say, concertina wire or rolls of barbed wire. Yes, they are. The government is communistic in Michael Hendricks. They are communistic in Australia, for sure. I don't know how bad it was in 1989. I'm just commenting on the latest political stances of Australia. We have 2 more. Archie Butterley. Some prisoners led contradictory lives outside of the prison. Archie Butterley had an extensive criminal record, including convictions for manslaughter and armed robbery. In 1974, he robbed a Perth department store, and 3 years later, while on work release, he robbed a bank and injured customers. A violent and controlling personality, he had killed a man while a teenager in Victoria. However, while in Fremantle Prison, he was described as intelligent and charming. He wrote reams of prose and poetry and attended Murdoch University as an external student. In 1980, he and his cellmate, Stephen Booth, attempted to escape cell E35 by digging a hole in the wall of their cell. They emerged the adjacent cell E36, and then they dug through to the Catholic chapel. They removed a metal-framed window and dislodged a bar from the opening. Butterley climbed through the and shimmied down a drain pipe to the roof of a walkway 2 blocks below. Unfortunately for him, he fell on the roof of the parade ground and broke his foot. Meanwhile, his companion panicked and returned to his cell. Realizing he would be unable to escape on a broken foot, Butterley hobbled to the stick officer's hut in the parade ground and turned himself in. When later questioned by the parole board as to whether he was reformed, Butterley answered, "I am a professional criminal and I will never get let out." Regardless, he was later released and soon arrested again in the eastern states trying to rob another bank. In 1993, Butterley escaped from Melbourne Remand Center with fellow prisoner Peter Gibb. with the help of Gibbs' lover, prison guard Heather Parker. The three were found later at after a massive manhunt, and Butterly was shot dead in a shootout with police. Who actually shot Butterly remains a mystery. At the inquest to the death, the coroner reported whether Butterly took his own life, firing a limited number of rounds at police, or shot by Gibb or Parker will essentially remained unanswered. And our last one, see if we have any more. Hi, Falkenrader. Michael Hendricks. Okay. The Postcard Bandit. Brendan Abbott, one of Fremantle Prison's most notorious prisoners, was arrested and found guilty for armed robbery offenses in 1987. 2 years later, Abbott, who and two companions escaped from the tailor shop in the West Workshops. Dressed in self-made prison officer uniforms, they climbed into the air conditioner duct and through the ceiling of the roof. They leapt from the armory to the perimeter wall of the superintendent's office. Abbott and Aaron Reynolds jumped successfully. The third prisoner fell and broke his leg, and was quickly recaptured. In the next 5 years, Abbott committed numerous armed robberies across Australia. Australia's most wanted criminal was recaptured in Queensland in 1994. He escaped from Brisbane Gaol 3 years later and remained on the run until a major police operation brought him in Darwin in 1998. During the pursuit, police found photographs of Abbott and Reynolds relaxing in holiday mode at tourist locations and outside Dwellingup police station. The tag Postcard Bandit was a media invention. Followed false reports that Abbott was sent teasing postcards and photos to police while on the run. Abbott is presently serving a long-term sentence in a Queensland maximum security prison, so hopefully he's still there. But that story was from 1994, so it's possible maybe Shorty Rides or some other people actually remember, because that was supposed to be one of the most famous armed robbers there in Australia. So this would be a little bit of a shorter live. I just wanted to, Gaol. Gaol is pronounced jail. Okay. Thank you. I was thinking of like it's pronounced ghoul in Gaelic. So I'm a little confused here. I'm sure I butchered quite a few of the Australian towns and people's names and stuff. So this episode is live, but we will also I will also release it on our YouTube, so you guys can watch it later, or also on Spotify for people to listen to later. So just let your friends know. We're trying to grow the channel, so let people know if they haven't heard of Hard Time. Let them give us a listen. This will be, like I said, a little bit of a shorter episode, but I appreciate you guys jumping on with me today. Appreciate Shorty Rides giving me the subject matter. I know we got into a little bit different than just the main stuff, but I appreciate y'all. Before I go, though, I would be remiss if I didn't do a Jake joke or two. This one is not in the form of a question. It's a statement. It says, I was arrested for drinking battery acid, but I wasn't charged. Another one. It's a statement, so hard to ask John a question. Says, my wife likes it when I blow air on her when she's hot, but I'm not a fan. Tyler, I used to do Jake jokes daily. I used to release a lot of them on the Instagram, but it wasn't terribly popular. People seemed to like the clips from the show and some of the media clips that, like I've said before, my PTSD likens a lot of pop culture to prison life, jails, and stuff like that. So, but I do try to share as many jokes as possible. And I'll share a few Jake jokes here. I once had a conversation with a dolphin. We just clicked. Yeah, I have one here from Steve Wiltz. I'll share this as the last one. It says, today I found out that my best friend's wife left him because he spent all their money on a penis enlarger. I guess she just couldn't take it any longer. Okay. Strange saying these jokes out into the ether just with your printed just with your comments as reactions, but hopefully you all enjoyed some of those Jake jokes. I enjoyed spending some time with you here on a Thursday afternoon. Maybe I'll do this. This is one of my days off, so maybe I'll do this a little bit more regularly now that I have a studio and space to do this. And like I said, I will continue to work on the soundproofing to save everyone's ears. So I appreciate you all. And we'll catch you around here next time. If you have any ideas for stories, even if it's just a subject or like an inmate or a jail or something that you want to hear more about, and I could do some more research, like in this case, I'm pretty open to DMs. I'm pretty available on Jake Motherfucker Welder at Instagram. So that's the easiest way to get a hold of me. And appreciate you guys. I'm glad you all enjoyed it, and we'll catch you next time. We'll be releasing a new episode tomorrow, and I haven't recorded that yet with John, so we'll see what subject we cover, and then we'll be re-releasing episodes on Monday. So thank you all for subscribing. My children appreciate the beers. Foxy, I did talk about the escaped firefighter. I talked about at the beginning of the show, so you can go back and listen. Okay. Don't know who the poster bandits are, but I appreciate y'all. I'll catch you later.